A better race piston. Why, you ask? Because we're squashing the out of the box pistons. I mean, we're squishing them bad enough that we're trapping rings. We're actually fixing it to a point where you can't move the wrist pin anymore. These bad boys, we've taken them to about 3 times their rated horsepower. These ones are rated for the horsepower that we're making. These ones cost about 1/3 of these ones. This is why we haven't done it yet, but now's the time.
Happens when you spend a lot of money on nice connecting rods and put shelf pistons in it.
This seems crude to me somehow.
What? The floating wrist pin?
Doesn't float anymore.
Doesn't float anymore? In fairness, it's not the piston's fault. Or not the rod's fault.
Not doing anything to the rod.
It's got a little mark, this one. But this is the real, look right there. That tells the story.
See that discoloration down in there? Those pistons are cupping is what's happening. So this is a stock shelf piston. With a stock shelf wrist pin.
This is the wrist pin we should have had in it.
If you compare wall thickness, it is considerable.
I mean, notice how this works perfectly.
Yeah, and you have no slack there. Everything's nice. The so if you compare the deck thickness of this piston and everything else with what we're putting in here, this wrist pin, and you can't even, all the pistons so far, you can't even, I mean.
Look at how it's fucked. Destination messed up, man.
If you want to, I mean, you got to take it and, like, that's just ridiculous how that has deformed. But that's a piston that's rated for probably 600 horsepower that's seeing triple what it's supposed to. So, I mean, that gives you some idea where you're headed.
All right. So now this is a piston made to do what we're going to do.
Yeah. If you look at this piston, how much more meat we have above the first ring. So that's going to put up with a lot. This is, and then you get your heavy pin, and this is a button style retainer instead of the devil clips. And the button style retainer is pretty flash.
Yeah, so basically what happens there is you push your thing in normally and you see there's no lock groove of any kind. And we got these pin buttons. So that's going to go in there. That lines up, and then we can move our oil ring down so much further that our oil ring is now supported by that pin button, and also our support rail just holds the piston setup together.
Yeah, we have
this can't go anywhere once it's in the bore.
We still have a support rail style ring,
which I mean probably is mainly for strength. I don't know. That's how Wiseco engineered and sent it, so I would assume that there's a reason.
Did they send the pistons with support rails?
Mm-hmm.
They did.
So then what we're going to do here is normally these support rails have that little dot on them for alignment, which normally you'd line up over the wrist pin. So we're going to take and we're going to line that little dot up over one of these. There's some gas porting behind these oil rings.
Yep.
We're going to go ahead and line that dot up right there.
They're not really gas porting, but
they're a vent, whatever.
Yeah. Made sort of like a gas porting.
Made like a gas port.
And we have a ring that is a gas ported ring. If you see those little ridges, that's a tool steel gas ported ring. It's the first of them I've seen. It's kind of interesting.
That's sort of a new, it's been out a year or two sort of thing. So it's a fairly new idea.
Rigid little bugger of a ring.
So now, just honestly, now that this is just installed, which you gotta make sure Your dot is lined up well over the gas port. Yep, it is.
If it's not,
So
you
now
want
that
the rings
that's
in.
there, this is now locked in. This can't really go anywhere now.
Yeah.
So this is installed. The piston's installed in the rod.
Yeah.
So this is quite a bit stronger setup.
Yeah, so you look at that rod, how heavy duty that thing is. Now we've got a heavy duty piston to stick on top of it.
Really, for a steel rod, that's about as strong as they're going to get.
Now I can see that Numbnuts is not going to be scared to really put the boost to it. So now we're really going to break some shit.
Yeah.
Or hit things.
Why not hit things? I don't vote for hitting things.
I don't like the probably not.
I don't like hitting things, really.
Well,
Not that I've ever hit anything.
actually you did hit the wall a little.
It hit me.
He just jumped out there and got you.
I couldn't steer, so it hit me.
Well, I mean, granted a locking differential would do that, but everybody has an excuse.
Well, that's my excuse. It wasn't my fault. There I was. A victim, really.
So this is definitely going to be an upgrade.
No, you don't want to do that, guys. Not only do I feel like I've bypassed my ring, but here we go.
Those things are such a little bugger
I like
to get set.
these oil rings are so thin.
They are. They're incredibly thin.
Perfect. So, there. That is set up. I will double check my.
That's a much more substantial looking setup than what we've had in the past.
Here's what I've been doing in the past. My second ring sets further down from the exhaust valve side. Exhaust valve side technically should carry more heat. So I'm lining that up over the wrist pin on the exhaust side.
Did you want your top ring out of the heat a little bit?
I want my top ring out of the heat a little bit. So now top ring, gas ports facing up towards the intake side. Everybody kind of sets their rings up a little different when you initially put them in the motor. Doesn't really matter because rings spin in pistons as they operate, or they're supposed to. With our old pistons, after the valve seats fell out, they no longer did that.
Yeah, our old pistons were kind of beat up. Our old pistons it's amazing it still ran.
It's amazing it still had any compression.
It ran not that bad either.
No, like it
I mean,
was fine. It didn't really burn oil. It pushed oil.
yeah. Yeah. Well, in fairness, I don't think the oil rings were hurt. I think the compression rings were hurt.
I mean, if you just take a look at these two pistons side by side, though.
Yeah, it's tremendous.
I mean, there's so much weight taken out of it. This is so much stronger.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, that's all filled in. That's hollow. These have more valve pocket up here for even different setups. These just have these little sissy ribs in it. That's a full thickness unit that's been, milled to give clearance for the wrist pin, I mean, even into this wall, everything. Look at that versus that skirt. And then the main thing is just where the rings are placed on the pistons. So if you actually line the rings up, see how much taller this new piston is above the top ring?
Oh, yeah.
So that's giving us so much more burn resistance to that top ring.
Yep.
So what they did on this is they've just moved the whole ring pack down on the piston. So
They were able to do that by using the button.
by using the button. So, and actually, I think these pistons are a pinch shorter. Yeah, they're a pinch shorter at the skirt too. They're right about the same.
Yeah, they're about the same.
So they moved the ring pack down. It's a way heavier forging.
Yeah, I don't know gram weight, what we are for a difference.
I can tell you gram weight with the pins, with those heavy pins and buttons and stuff, we should go weigh one. But I can promise you, it's significant. Why don't we go do that? It's really, this should all go and get balanced. I'm not going to do that. Send it.
Yeah. Well.
Well, in fairness, this crank, we've already ran it not balanced, because this crank I put in it end of last year because the good crank, the oil pump
Fell off.
decided to strip the threads out of the rear cap.
Yeah.
And it fell off and it cracked the crank when it did it.
Wet sump life.
Wet sump life. So then I just threw a shelf crank in it and they were close anyways. The last time I had it balanced, because those pistons, they had to remove 18 grams of bob weight.
Mm-hmm.
Really close. So 18 grams on that. These are definitely heavier. They'd probably have to add a pinch of Mallory really on these. Probably. So why don't we go measure one of these actually for the science?
We'll see if we can get that scale to come on.
For the science channel.
We'll do that.
So this is our old thin wrist pin and our old piston.
Our shelf piston.
562 grams. What's the piston alone, I wonder? 430. Well, curious what this piston is. Any guesstimations on total weight for this setup?
I think you'll pick up 130 grams.
I think it's going to be something like that too. So, just the piston. Oof. 504 from 430, so we're 60 grams right there. 630, we're not done. That's the old pin. $677 plus pin buttons.
Oh boy.
703 grams.
We have picked up a lot.
So we're 703 from 562. So
140.
yeah. Now I'm curious what if outfitted with the same
141, whatever, but
if outfitted with the same equipment.
not even close.
Still not even close.
629.
That just tells you the amount of beef.
Yeah. Just throw each on there again. Empty piston, empty piston.
430. 500.
504. Wrist pins individually.
Heavy pin.
172.
Holy
that is
Lanta.
a lot of pin, isn't it? 133.
I'll go these little buttons. I wonder.
They're pretty.
14 grams each.
Yep.
So really, well, you wouldn't ever want to even put a big pin like this in these pistons.
Our pins weren't really.
What you could see is that. Well, now we can't say that it's not because it didn't make these pins not round and then ruin the pistons. But these,
it almost looks like just because the piston is bad on each end, you know, like more than through the center of the bore, just the edges of the bore are burnt, it would make you think the piston is cupping.
which it could be if all that combustion pressure is pushing right there.
The fact that we have the number of rings pinched that we have
Yeah.
would also make me think the piston is cupping.
Yeah.
So, I believe.
So much more badass.
Yeah, triple the price.
At least, yeah.
Well, no, well, not quite triple. Actually, they're just a little over double. Because these are pretty close to 600 now.
Yeah.
And these are 1,500. But that was without the pins, right?
1,500 without the pins. The pins
Yeah.
were $400.
Yeah, so there would be triple time you get everything done. Ouch.
But hopefully won't fail.
Considering how long it took to get those, you should order one right and one left. And have some on the shelf.
This never fails to fail. This shouldn't ever fail. So.
No, I don't know that the piston will fail, but if something around it fails and bangs the piston up, it'd be nice to have a piston.
Yeah. So, the 140 extra grams, probably going to throw the bob weight off a little bit.
So Bob weight off a lot, but Bob weight wasn't right anyway, so.
Well, that's why I'm saying
Yeah.
I think still we would have needed a couple grams of Mallory probably.
You could actually, if you really was thinking about it, we could still send that in and get that done. You could look and see what Bob weight that crank is sold with.
Yeah.
And we could, we could measure everything out and see if we're even semi.
Yeah. No.
Because if it's way off and we think it's going to shake the thing to death, well.
I doubt it will.
You like to turn it 8,500 all the damn time.
Moving's out up there.
Yeah.